tomorrow, you have until the first post of the first race. And speaking of the first race, we do have some exciting wagering opportunities to offer you today. And in the first race starts the $1 rolling super high five. We have a carryover building in that of just over $1,200. The first race also starts the early pick five, one of two. I'll have tickets for both of those, 50-cent wager. And then race number 5 today starts the Rainbow Six. We have a good carryover building there. It wasn't hit yesterday, 43,578 to be exact. And then we round it out with race number 6, the late pick 5, and again, just a 50-cent wager there. The first race today, we'll dive right in. Is 1 mile on the turf. It's a $30,000 claiming event for fillies and mares, 3-year-olds and up. Condition claimers in here. And this is, again, where the early pick 5 starts. So before we start talking about this race, I'll give you a quick look at my ticket. No singles for me today. I went 3 deep here to start it off. I didn't think this was the easiest race to begin with. I really like the number 10 Gelato Gal in the second race. She's going to be the top pick for me, but I did go a little bit protectively. Thought there were a couple evenly matched runners in the third, so spread a bit there, and then 2 deep in the final 2 legs. Again, $48. But as I mentioned, not the easiest way to start off this first race. How did you see it, Gabby?
The first race, the first couple of races, it's difficult because once you get to the latter half of the card, you have some really nice featured allowance races. You have some really quality made and special weight races too. But in the first half, the waters are a little bit murky because you get to those low-level maiden claimers or just low-level conditional claimers too. So the early pick 5 is tough, but it is a mandatory payout. So usually it does pay pretty well, as the late pick 5 does carry over if it is not hit. But race 1, I kind of look towards the outside with the 7 Danish Princess, and we'll show a replay, I believe, of this filly's performance. This was actually 2 starts back up at Woodbine, and I thought overall this was a filly that was very keen on the inside the entire way. So I kind of wanted to show her in the early stages of the race because she was pretty hard to settle and really expended a lot of early energy. She didn't really have a lot left for the finish, but she still kept on kind of grinding out a run. We can see here she has the opportunity. She's waiting here at the quarter pole. She has the opportunity to maybe try to go inside up the rail between the number 4 and the rail post position, but the rider still continues to keep her behind horses, and this is, in my opinion, a huge pet peeve because she doesn't have any confidence. She's kind of running right behind the number 7 horse. She doesn't have full room to run. Despite that, she kind of finds room between a really small seam between 2 horses. And I like her. I'm picking her off of that race today. New connections and the blinkers come off. The only negative thing with a horse like this, Acacia, on the turf at Gulfstream with these connections, they're only 3 for 25. So this is where I thought, I like her, but you have to use several horses in the first leg of the pick 5.
I agree, and that is why I went 3 deep in here, though I did land on the same horse on top. Based off of that performance, it almost seemed like he tried to take her outside and then thought better of it. The next time, in her most recent start, she was off slow. She did show a little bit of late rally, though, last time, which I liked, and what really pushed her over the edge for me was the work tab that she's had here locally on the Palm Meadows turf course in particular. 2 bullet works at 4 furlongs, 47 and 3 and 47 and 1. Recently, it looks like she's coming in. She's going to be pretty strong and ready to go. I also used the number 5, Forever for Always, for Jenna Antonucci, who was a good second last time out behind Marmalade, who came back to win another allowance after that. I think that this horse is in pretty good form.
She is, and she kind of fits the bill towards if the race kind of falls apart a little bit. I think she has a little bit more positional speed than my second selection, and I'm just throwing her in at a big price. By no means do I think she's going to win because she's 3 for 57, obviously. But she looks like one that has been facing slightly tougher company in the past few starts. They've been trying her against allowance company, and she has kind of maintained, she's kind of been flat coming down the stretch, but it is a class relief year, and I look for her to be closing from off the pace. And like I said, I think she's maybe one to use for exotics.
Yeah, absolutely. She has the image of Rachel, the 2 has come running late in the past, and then we both used the number 4 Ascot Girl for Michael Matz and Edgar Prado. Had a pretty solid performance in allowance company at Laurel. She hasn't quite been in the best form in her past couple of races, though.
And that's the thing. I thought her Kentucky Downs performance was excusable because of such a slow pace, and she was so far back off of the pace. And not to mention, Kentucky Downs has a very odd configuration. Sometimes we see horses love it or they loathe it. And I think that was the case for this filly. She didn't quite like the configuration. Last time out, though, I thought it was kind of an inexcusable performance. I thought she got a good pace in front of her. There were horses that were closing that day. There were horses that were winning on the lead. It was a very fair surface, and she just could not deliver. That said, it was a pretty good race. We saw Marabi come back and win on Claiming Crown Day. Those are probably allowance quality horses as opposed to starter allowance quality. So you could argue that she might be getting a touch of a class relief.
I think she certainly is, and that's one of the reasons I threw her on, and you did as well. Race number 2 today is 1 mile on the main track. It's a $12,500 maiden claiming event for fillies and mares, 3-year-olds and upward. We both went to the outside. Once again, I alluded to her earlier. Gelato Gal looks like on the class drop.
She does, and she is one that has been running on the turf pretty much her entire career. The only time that she has run on the main track was on a sloppy sealed surface, and that was against Maiden Special Weight Company. And overall, she is better bred for the turf. She is by Hat Trick. She's out of a Corinthian mare. But I think the class relief alone is just going to be the best thing for this filly, because whether or not she likes the dirt or the turf, I think she just holds the class advantage.
She certainly does. She's been running against much tougher, albeit not exceptionally well. She does have a couple of solid performances against Maiden Special Weight Company on the turf. In that sealed sloppy track, she did finish third. I thought that she showed a little bit more early interest than she had on the turf. Maybe she's going to be a bit more forwardly placed from the outside in here. And again, it's a bigger class drop. She has a nice work tab over on the Palm Meadows turf course as well. So she's certainly fit with a couple races coming into this one. Maybe just with the surface switch, she's able to kind of wrap it up.
Yeah, that's the big question, is can she transition that form or at least make a lateral move on the main track. The 2, I'm Priceless to the inside. She has one that's got some speed, and I think with added distance and an inside post position, why not utilize her best attribute, and that is her speed. She does get in. Tyler Gaffalione has ridden her in her lone 2 dirt tries, and now she gets in with a 5-pound apprentice, so a little bit of a lighter weight to help her maybe show some of that gate speed.
Well, I think that'll be the key, too. And her 2 dirt races were pretty solid. Her only disappointing one was on the turf, so this definitely seems to be her preferred surface. And if you like I'm Priceless, you kind of, I think, have to throw Tooth or Bell, the one, in there, as well, as they've been taking turns beating each other in the last couple starts.
I think horses who have less starts are just more enticing than 0 for 10 maidens, just in general. And sometimes it can be a bit of a ruse, because you, as you said, they have been kind of competing against each other, going back and forth. And, you know, Tooth or Bell, yes, she has more starts, but it's tough to kind of distinguish between these 2. I just liked the 2 because I think she has more hope, I guess, with less starts on her on her form. The only other horse that I looked at was the 4 Dietitian Michelle. I think this is more of a last-ditch effort. This filly is by Giant Oak, and on the bottom side, she's actually a half-to Emotional Kitten, who is a Grade 2 winner on the turf. So obviously turf didn't pan out, and I think this is the last-ditch effort. Let's just see if she likes the dirt.
That kind of seemed what it was to me. It almost looked a little bit kind of desperation. She was running against $35,000 maidens and then took a layoff from February to November, tried Special Weight Company last time, and that was a bomber. So maybe a huge class drop. Maybe this is just where she's belonged all along.
Let's hope so. Hopefully the dirt surface does wake her up a bit.
And we'll see how that works. And race number 3 today is 6 furlongs on the main track. It's a 62.50 non-winners of 3 event for fillies and mares. And this one, we're kind of all over the place. And I thought that this was a pretty tough, wide open race.
It was, and because the 7 Summer Whites, I do really like her in here, but I guess we'll start off with talking about her. I like her back form, and that's why I picked her in here today. I thought her race when she beat non-winners of 2 Lifetime at Indiana Grand was very good. They stretched her out to 7 furlongs, and she took pressure really the entire way, and that was her first time stretching out to that distance on the main track. And they went a pretty decent fractions, I would say, early with that pressure for that level of competition. The winner, Ultra Rumba, actually came back to take an open $16,000 race, getting a 61 by her speed figure. So overall, I thought that race stacked up well against this company. I like the cutback in distance, but the connections, Murat Senkal, first off the claim on the dirt, only 1 for 10 and a negative ROI. So that's why I'm not fully confident with this pick.
I can understand that. And, I thought the races were fine. The 2 turf ones were the only disappointing ones. I just went for a horse that I think has maybe a better shot that she's just going to go out to the front and never look back. The number 50 out for Aubrey Mirage is not only dropping in class, this is now going to be the lowest that she's ever run for. She had showed a bit of promise early on in her career with that early speed when she was in the barn of Wesley Ward. She was claimed she's not running great in her last couple of starts, but that was 3 starts with the blinkers on. They're taking the blinkers off now. It looks like she shows a lot more speed with the blinkers off, actually. Maybe it's just that she feels more comfortable. She can see her competition a bit more. I think it's a comfort thing, and with the class drop, and she gets a big rider change to Paco Lopez today.
She does get a big rider change, and as you said, in her first start, she actually went wire to wire there on the main track. So maybe the move back to the main track will help her. My concern with her was that she was running really good races under the handling of Wesley Ward. She was running really fast, and just in her past 2 starts since the claim, she hasn't shown that same speed even on the turf. So maybe the drop and the surface switch will wake her up, and she should be a pretty decent price. I think this is a race, Acacia, that you have to use several horses, whether it be horses that are speed types like your horse, or maybe some closers like the 2 Sherry's Win, who you and I both use. The Wildcat Gaze to the inside is probably going to show some speed as well for Jane Sabelli. So it's kind of a tricky race to get through in the early pick 5.
It's a tricky race for sure, and I agree that Wildcat Gaze, the one, might show a little speed, especially with Apprentice Lane Luzzy up. I do want to give a quick trainer stat on Jane Sabelli in the past 5 years with horses that won last time out in dirt sprints. Pretty good percentages. That's what I'm looking at, not so much the ROI, but 23% win, 53% of the time in the money. 151 for the ROI, but this one won against 12-5 Company last time, so against tougher. Yes, it was non-winners of 2, so we'll see if a little bit lesser non-winners of 3 is in the wheelhouse for Wildcat Gaze.
And sometimes just getting through those conditions can be very tough. I mean, you see this horse who has 15 lifetime starts. Took a long time for this horse to get from breaking her maiden to taking that non-winners of 2 lifetime condition, and now she has to face non-winners of 3. So sometimes it can be very tough, but I do like the fact that she has speed from the rail post.
Speed from the rail post drawn well today in a wide open race number 3. The 4th race is 1 mile on the main track, another 62.50 non-winners of 3. And this one I thought a little bit more clear cut. I was between 2 horses, and you went with the horse that I almost put on top, Rora Ima.
Just because she's been facing slightly tougher company. I mean, especially her last race, Starter Allowance Company, big class relief from there. Prior to that, she was going against 12,500 conditional claimers. And prior to that, I know she's 2 for 21 on form here. She had been exposed against the 62.50 non-winners at 2 lifetime level. But after that win, Acacia, they did step her up to tougher competition, and they never really dropped her. So my thinking was this was the first time that she is dropping back down to the right level.
This just might be where she needed to be all along. She tried to run against tougher, and she ran pretty admirably in a couple of those allowance races. I just wasn't sure if maybe now she's back onto the drop. This, again, just might be the right place for her, but I thought that the number 6 Slava might have the chance to wake up a bit, and she came off of about a 9-month layoff and first off the claim moving into the barn of Tammy Levy. She ran actually okay last time. She did show a little bit of rally. It just looked like she hadn't raced in about 9 months because she hadn't. Now she takes the blinkers off here, and now she's got the 2nd start in the barn. She's stretching out to the mile, where she does have a very good record at this distance as well. 2 starts, a win, and a 2nd. So maybe all of the things come together the 2nd start in the barn.
And I think the thing about her success in stretching out to distance is that she can show more speed, and she can kind of stay out of trouble, because I don't really think she's a closing sprinter. As you said, she did look a little bit short of fitness last time out, but I also don't think that she likes to make that big closing run. So stretching her out to the mile gives her the ability to sit a bit closer. Good statistics for Tammy Levy with this type of move too. And I like the fact that off of that layoff, they protect factored her in for that waiver claiming, so she was not eligible to be claimed. They had confidence with this horse, thinking that maybe she needed a sprint race to get her back into fitness and stretch her out to this mile today.
Looks like they do have some confidence in her, and she's 6-1 in the morning line, so might get a little bit of a price. The number 1 to the rail, Katira Rock, is another one stretching out.
Stretching out today from 5.5 furlongs. Second off, a bit of a freshening for Fernando Abreu. This is another one. It's very tough to have a lot of confidence in Katira Rock because she is 2 for 21 lifetime, but she definitely does look like one that might be better at the mile, or at least a little bit longer.
You have to look a long way back to find her last win, 0 for 13 in 2016, but I think I agree with you. It does have a chance to hit the board in here. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll go through the Rainbow Six. We'll see Gabby's ticket. Don't forget, just a 20-cent wager.
January 28th at Gulfstream Park, an icon takes flight. The world's richest thoroughbred horse race. 12 of the sport's finest horses. One race. $12 million on the line. Watch, wager, witness. Go to PegasusWorldCup.com for more.
Welcome back to Gulfstream today. Acacia and Gabby ready to tackle the Rainbow Six. We have a carryover building in that. Don't forget, it's 43,578 to be exact. It starts here in race number 5, which is a mile and 3/16 on the turf, and allowance optional claiming. Gabby, how'd you see the pick 6 today?
Let's take a look. I could not find a single. It's pretty difficult today, in my opinion, so we're going to have to go very light in a couple legs of the sequence and hope we get to the last, because I'm only using 2 horses in the last leg. In race 5, I will be starting us off with both the 1 and the 6 Patterson Cross. I really like Patterson Cross, but Daniel Villa does great work with some of his horses coming to South Florida from the synthetic up at Woodbine. As we move along, using 3 horses in race 6, 3 horses in race 7, which is a starter allowance. As we get to race 8, just using 2 horses in the 7 and the 12 Bucky's Boy, and trying to find a price in there with the 12 Color Me Pegasus. I thought race 9 was a spread race. It's our featured race of the day. Very nice featured turf allowance. And to wrap things up, we have a maiden claimer on the turf, just using 112. I think if you have bigger funds than I do, use a couple horses in the final leg. I kind of took the bookends of the field with the 1 and 12.
Not the easiest sequence today for sure, but we do start it off with a nice race. Again, mile and 3/16 on the turf. I'm in agreement with you with Patterson Cross. He looks like the one to beat.
He does. We'll take a look at his last replay. This was on the 19th of November back at Churchill, and I just think he's kind of the up-and-comer in this particular race. And we look at his race last time out. The blinkers do go on today, but last time out it looked like it was kind of hard to make up a lot of ground behind that slow pace, and not to mention he was extremely wide going into that final turn. We saw the winner, Halo Nation, he kind of stalked the pace, but you could just tell that the pace held together because Give to UK Cats, who was the pace setter in that race, he was sprinting, and they stretched him out to a mile and 3/8 last time out, and he got the opportunity to slow the pace down and almost take them wire to wire. So I think he was kind of up against it. Patterson Cross last time out. The blinkers go on to probably help him focus a little bit more while braking, because in the past it looks like he's had trouble braking.
That does look like to be one of his biggest things is getting out of the gate smoothly, but I thought he was keeping good company last time. I thought he ran pretty solidly. He's a full 2 multiple graded stakes winner. Newsdad, nicely bred 3-year-old by Arch, and again Bill Mott, the trainer, Jose Lascano going to be in the saddle. Lots of things to like about Patterson Cross, and you also used the number number 1 Hines on your Rainbow Six ticket. And I stared at this horse for the longest time. I ended up using him in my superfecta, though a little bit lower, but maybe I should have had him a bit higher up. But it's kind of a salty bunch, I thought, in here. Maybe Hines can improve coming to South Florida.
Well, he's already won the A other than condition, but today he's in for that optional claiming type of the condition. So he's already beaten this level of company before in the past, and that was actually at Gulfstream Park West last year. Now, he did have a little bit of a hiatus. He came back in his 2016 season, and he had 2 turf tries. One of them was up at Woodbine going 9 furlongs. Clear View was the winner. He was exiting grade 2 competition prior to that, so I thought that was a pretty salty field. Overall, I believe some horses came out of that race to be really effective, even outside of Woodbine against graded stakes company. So him coming back to a strong surface, that being the turf, I kind of like him in here, so I felt confident with just using these 2.
Yeah, and he has had a couple of runs, 3 runs exactly, over this Gulfstream Park turf course. No wins yet, but he did have a good 3rd place finish earlier on in his career. And you know, he's definitely a player in here. We were talking about this yesterday, that maybe you do have to take a second look at the Woodbine stats. The horse is coming from Woodbine to run here in South Florida. We've seen some good runners. I wasn't enamored with his past couple of races. I did kind of have a little bit of a tug. Couldn't stop thinking about the number 5 Barack for Kieran McLaughlin. He also did have the number 2 in here, Muhawar, who's scratched out of the race, but they're actually half brothers, which is interesting too. But Barack, a distorted humor, 3-year-old Ridgeling, and this one tried 7 furlongs on the turf, 2 starts back in special weight company, stretched out to a mile and an eighth and broke his maiden last time, so he's facing winners for the first time. I know that's a really big asking, but he's working very nicely at Palmettos here. He's coming off fresh. We know that Kieran McLaughlin does have horses ready to run fresh. I just thought he might be a sneaky player at a price.
And I think a horse like this, his speed is his best attribute, because we see several others in here who don't look like they have a tremendous amount of speed. And not to say that he's going to go to the lead, but he does have positional speed, especially at this distance. He's an unknown at this distance, but considering that he was just a few lengths off at 7 furlongs and even 9 furlongs, he stalked the pace. I would imagine he's going to be pretty close. You took a look at the number 9 War Bond for Christophe Clement to the outside.
Well, this one's a nicely bred 3-year-old by Warfront, and broke his maiden at a mile and a 16th. Face winners for the first time last time out, was wide on the first turn, just really out in the center of the track there. Kind of an oddly run race, and I think it's actually much better visually than it is on paper. If you go back and watch that race, he did have some run even after being so wide the whole time. He's coming from the outside. You mentioned that there's not a lot of horses with speed. I think he'll be a bit more forwardly placed in this spot.
And the only thing with him, and I respect him, I mean, I use him 4th in here, was I handicapped this race thinking class, and to me it looks like Patterson Cross is kind of the up-and-comer. He's been running against pretty good company in Kentucky at both Keeneland and Churchill, as is the one, as I kind of alluded to earlier, he's been competing against horses who are running in graded stakes competition, whereas Warbond had to be taken to Monmouth in a maiden special weight in order to win at 80 cents of the dollar. He had been exposed against maiden special weight company prior to that up in New York. So my question for him is, how good is he? But he did have excuses in his last race, as you were mentioning.
Yeah, he had excuses last time, and that's the question here. He's got a lot to prove. He's certainly not a lock in here. I did, as I said, think that race is a little bit better. Trying to get some prices, but definitely a nice bunch to start off the Rainbow Six. Race number 6 today starts the late pick 5. That's 6 furlongs. The starter optional claiming for the 2-year-old fillies. And again, it starts the late pick 5. We'll give you a quick look at my ticket. 6 furlongs on the main track once again. And I agree with you. No singles for me today. I actually went 4 deep in this race. I think that the number 5 Worth Avenue is going to take a ton of money off that impressive maiden win. Trying to get some prices home along with her. 2 deep in the next race, and then 3, 2, and 2. I only went 2 deep in the last race too, because I did spread a little bit earlier on. So again, it's not the easiest sequence, but I think there's definitely room for some value.
And I like that you use several horses in this leg, because if I had my way, I would definitely use 4 horses in this leg of the sequence. I just kind of stuck to 3. And you liked the 5 Worth Avenue here. These races, in my opinion, when you're handicapping these 2-year-old, this particular condition, this kind of starter allowance, optional claiming condition, they're very difficult, because you see horses that win primarily at Gulfstream or Gulfstream Park West or Monmouth, speedy type of tracks. They're coming here off of those wins and facing winners for the first time, and some of them winning by open margins. So it's hard to kind of decipher who's the phony ones and who are the legitimate ones.
Yeah, that really is the key. I put Worth Avenue on top, but it was kind of hesitantly so, and that goes just, it is backed up by the fact that I did go 4 deep in the pick 5, because I thought it was a nice performance. I liked everything that I saw from her in her debut, but was that a fluke? I mean, where did that performance really come from? Is she going to be able to repeat that kind of thing? I don't think against this field she's going to win by more than 9 lengths. Does she have a shot to win? Absolutely. But the choice will remain to be seen whether she can back up that kind of performance.
And the way you do, I think, how you can get a decent grasp of whether or not it was a fluke or whether or not they're going to duplicate it again is looking at the fillies that she did compete against. And there goes Bella, the second place finisher. She came back to face maiden $35,000 company again. She was beaten at a short price. Another horse went on to win outside, or excuse me, went on to drop outside of this race against maiden 12,500 condition and was third, so was beaten at a much lower level. So that's why I kind of took the wait and see approach, whereas Mischief Moss for Eddie Pliza ran against solid competition in her debut. Day by day, we saw a run back for Kelly Breen off the layoff last week. It was a sloppy track. You can't really hold it against her, but she's very fast. Nana Mela went up to Saratoga and won the Adirondack. So we're talking about stakes quality 2-year-old fillies. They dropped her in class. She won as the heavy favorite. To me, that looked like a more legitimate type of move for a horse that was coming out of tough competition.
It was tough competition. She ran okay in her special weight debut, won by open lengths against Claiming. Now she's been on the shelf for about 6 months, though. I do want to give a trainer stat on Eddie Pliza Jr., an exceptional trainer, but in the past 5 years with horses that won last time out and then took a 61 to 180 day layoff, just 12% win. 50% of the time they'll come back and run in the money and a negative ROI of 89 cents. So something just to keep in mind there. Again, she absolutely could win in here. She's got regular rider Paco Lopez up, but just a little bit hesitant coming off of that layoff.
It is a little bit, you're right, and that's a great stat. If you do, those were winners last out, but if you kind of hone into maiden winners last out, he's actually 3 for 10, so that's 30%. So it's not so bad with his maiden winners last out, but I don't think you can have a tremendous amount of confidence in anybody here. I mean, maybe a horse that I kind of looked at as well, maybe horses that have been facing winners already. I mean, you took a liking to the number 8 working Carol Kay, who's fresh off of a victory. I just kind of looked at horses who had been exposed already against winners, like the 4 Okendrita for Kathleen O'Connell. At least she's maintained consistency on multiple different surfaces too.
Consistency, yeah. She finished. She
Tough
finished second in her last 2. But I agree, it is hard to kind of single in on anybody in here.
Yes, and that does kick off the pick 5, so good luck.
I know, good luck with that. We'll move on to race number 7. It's a 7-furlong starter allowance on the main track in here for the 2-year-olds. And I thought that this was another good bunch in here. For me, it was hard to single in. You went with the number 2, Promeet, which I don't blame you.
And, well, I believe we have a video spotlight replay for this 2-year-old colt. It was first time out going against a maiden claiming company, upper-level maiden claiming company at Gulfstream Park West. And I just really thought he was professional this entire race. He rated nicely down inside of horses, and once the opportunity came, he kind of drew clear from the rest of the field. The third-place finisher, R. Sarge, came back to win, albeit dropping in class a little bit to the 35,000 level. But Him looking at the way I like to handicap these races is just looking at these horses visually and how they run. And I thought he handled himself professionally inside, drew clear. Whereas a couple of these horses coming down the lane, they were kind of on the wrong lead. They just they kind of looked like they won by default. But I liked how he finished up that race.
I did too. I thought it was pretty solid performance there. He definitely ran well in his debut. I landed on the number 3, In Some Money, who does have his own fair share of questions. His first 2 starts, though they were both very good, were both on wet tracks. I landed on a wet fast track going 5.5 furlongs in his debut at the beginning of September, found a sloppy track taken off of the turf last time out, in which he ended up breaking his maiden. So he's got to prove he can take that to a fast track.
Exactly, and I think he should be able to. This is he's very nicely bred. He delivered when he was meant to last time out as the favorite. A little bit of race riding with a horse down on the inside. CJ Hernandez had to kind of work out a trip, but I thought he overcame a lot. The only negative, and I like him, I picked him second. The reason why I picked him second and not first was kind of the statistics on Ralph Nix with these types of horses, and we'll show a stat, I believe, with maiden winners last out, coming back and winning, sprinting on the dirt. He's 8% and a negative ROI of 51 cents. So that said, I do think this horse merits a little bit of respect. These are tough races to get through in the pick 5.
Well, these 2 look like the logical as well. And then we also have 2 in here from Dave Brady. I really liked the number 1 Grubert in his last race. He dropped from Special Weight Company to maiden, claiming last time he's got the speed, he's drawn the rail, but Dave Brady does also have the number 6 Flemish Cap.
He does, and this was a horse that, again, he was an open length winner against maiden claiming company at Gulfstream back in September. We'll show a stat for David Brady here, going from turf to dirt with his sprinters. 0 for 20, 4 for 20 in the money. So that is not a really encouraging statistic for Flemish Cap. And as you kind of looked at both horses of the barns, I think the 1 might be your better alternative in this race.
And he's actually 10-1 on the morning line, the number 1 Grubert, and that was kind of a speed play for me. Really liked his last performance last time, and I thought maiden special was a bit too tough, but not an easy race is race number 7 as we move on to the 8th race today, a mile and a 16th on the turf, a 16,000 non-winners of 2 claiming event for the 3-year-olds. And you went to the outside. Let's hear about the number 12, Color Me Pegasus.
I know, this is a crazy pick once again, but I was interested in this horse prior to the scratches. I think I picked him maybe 5th or 6th, and I know that doesn't sound like I was very interested in him. I just didn't have the confidence in going with a horse like that who's sitting on such a subpar performance. But I originally liked the 4 Mama's Mark. This horse is a scratch in here. I also lost another horse in the 6 Reynard Fox, so he kind of bumps up a bit. And also those 2 horses figured to show some speed. Color Me Pegasus, I think, it's his only hope. If he doesn't show speed today, I'm going to be regretting picking him, betting him, what have you, on the backside. But Color Me Pegasus, he used to be very fast. This is a horse who was very competitive against this level of competition at Gulfstream Park West. He put in a dud last time out. Maybe it was too tough of a condition off the claim. Maybe he didn't like the good going. He didn't like a little bit of cut in the ground. But if he can show speed from the outside and get that pressing trip, that'll be a good thing. And Paco Lopez is aboard, which I thought was encouraging too.
Well, there's definitely some upside to him. His 2 turf starts prior to his most recent outing were very good. He tried the turf for the first time. It was a big prize. I remember I actually bet him that day because I think he went off 10-1. He won by nearly 3 lengths, came back to that performance up by beating just ahead. Last time he was also first off the claim in a new barn. He had stepped up in competition, so maybe you can make some excuses for him and you'll certainly get a good price, which is always nice to see. I landed on the number 7, My Bucky's Boy, who's also dropping in class. I thought he ran pretty solidly last time against tougher.
He is a horse to beat, in my opinion. Last time out, he still ran against Mystic Sky, and Mystic Sky came back to win a restricted starter allowance optional claiming race. And prior to that, I thought he got a perfect trip under Nick Juarez in breaking his maiden. I mean, this is a horse who was facing higher level maiden claimers, whereas my top selection won against lower level maiden claimers. So it is difficult, but I do think that my Bucky's Boy is the horse to beat here. I was just trying to get creative with an oddball horse to the outside.
Yeah, I cannot blame you about that at all. We do want to go back and show a spotlight on my Bucky's Boy. And I thought he ran pretty well at Gulfstream Park West. This was on October 22nd. This was actually his maiden victory.
This was his maiden victory. He had been competing against pretty much similar company prior to that, but maybe the layoff did help him. He was fresh and ready to go in late October. Even in his next race after that, Acacia, I thought what was really special about that race, and he kind of faded down the lane so we couldn't show it, but he did really all of the dirty work and faded last minute, pretty much in the final 16th of a mile. So he's not bad. If with some of the scratches, he could be, this is a race where you could probably limit your selections if you're looking at those multi-race sequences.
Good idea, and try and keep that ticket affordable as we move on to the 9th race today, which is 7.5 furlongs on the turf, allowance optional claiming for fillies and mares, 3-year-olds and up. And this is a nice field, not an easy race to handicap, which does seem to be the theme today. You went to the number 7, Frosty Friday.
We'll show a replay of her performance. This was 2 starts back here locally at Gulfstream back in the mid-July. She was coming off a bit of a layoff since April, actually. And I thought this was a good race. She rated down on inside. She was coming off that 3-month layoff. And then at the quarter pole, she did experience a little bit of trouble. I just thought she was very game kind of coming down the stretch, and we'll get to that stretch in just a bit, but she is down on the inside, of course, in the Gary Barber colors. It looks like Eddie Castro kind of had a mitt full of horse, just waiting to find a seam here behind a wall of horses. Just kind of kept on waiting. And right here, Acacia, this is where you want to make your move in order to win. As we see, not a tremendous amount of horses have closed off the pace on the turf here at Gulfstream, especially over the summer, but keeps on grinding out a run, and I liked her performance behind Sweetie Girl that day.
But she showed a lot of tenacity in that performance. Really did like that as well. I had her on there for all those reasons, but I leaned it on the number 5, Biamonte, who tried grade 3 company last time out. It was not her best effort by far, but she actually had a 4-race win streak prior to that. I think maybe off of that effort last time, she might be a little bit ignored in the betting, but she was running against grade 3 company.
And it's funny when you see a horse like this, because sometimes I like to revert back to how their form was here during the winter last year, because that's when the waters get a little bit deeper. And she was actually going against claiming company, and she had such a good campaign over the summer that she managed to kind of climb up the claiming ladders into two other than allowance competition at Monmouth and win. A little bit auspiciously placed last time out. I think this is a much better spot for her.
This definitely looks like the place where she needs to be. As we move to our finale today, hopefully we both make it to our 2-horse selections in the last race here. And I think we both went different ways. Tell us about the number 12, Vino Blanco.
Well, I looked towards and talking about the late pick 5, or excuse me, the pick 6 ticket that I did show. I went with the bookends pretty much of this field. To the inside, the one Who's Your Drama, who is the legitimate horse, and the 12 Vino Blanco. And I think these two horses really, they're coming out of good competition. This is a horse who's faced restricted maiden claiming company in the past several starts at New York. I'm not crazy about his running style. I think he's got a running style where he has to take back and make one move from the outside post position. But the level of competition stacks up, as does the one Who's Your Drama.
Well, the number 12, Vino Blanco, he's been running against state-bred maidens in New York, and he's coming down now to Florida for the first time. I agree with you on the running style. That's why I did go to a horse that's a bit less tested, number 8, Kitten for Granny, who tried the turf at a mile in his debut for Mike Maker. Didn't really run a step in that one at all, but he's dropping into maiden claiming company. We'll give a quick stat on Mike Maker in the past 5 years with horses going maiden special weight to maiden claiming on the turf. 16% win, not as high as I was expecting, I'll be honest, but 59% in the money, positive ROI of 205. It's a big drop, so that's of course cause for concern, but hopefully he can improve with the class drop. I agree, Who's Your Drama, the one, is the horse to beat.
Well, the thing about Ken and Sarah Ramsey and Mike Maker, they put their horses where they win, and that's why they just have so such great stats. I mean, you can keep looking all day long for stats at Mike Maker, and they always seem to be a positive ROI for some reason. And with this horse, this is the right move. He didn't show up on the turf first time out. He's bred for the turf. He's by Kitten's Joy, obviously. So I think he's one that you can respect. Looking at specifically kind of honing in on stats, so that was a great stat that you showed. With a positive ROI, but with maiden special weights to maiden claimers in their second start alone, just second-time starters, he is 0 for 12, so that's why I kind of bumped him down the line. But this is a horse who I think he will win, or he could definitely win, and if you have a bigger bankroll for the pick 5, pick 6, he's probably a must-use. I just took an aggressive approach, and sometimes you have to make decisions in these multi-race sequences.
Well, sometimes that's how you get the big prices home. Lots of exciting races on tap for today. Don't forget we have a super high five carryover starting in race 1 and a carryover in the race Rainbow 6, which starts in race number 5. Good luck, everyone.
What do I love about horse racing?